uniquely, I think, among people in our discussion in American politics, you can give us historical perspective. And I would love to get your historical perspective on this Republican field that we have seen going back to when there was 9 or 10 of them on the stage at the debates. You know, I think it's the craziest I've ever seen, but, you know, maybe there was somebody, as a historian, you know, maybe in the election of 1840 they were nuttier, but were they? Has there ever been a field like this?
Well, there was, but it was always on the fringe. I mean, I was in the Kennedy-Johnson administration in the 60s, and Barry Goldwater was the candidate. His press secretary, who I know and have had on my show, Vic Gold, said if Barry Goldwater were around today, he couldn't run for president because his party has become too radical.
Or Reagan.
Or Reagan, and Reagan too. In the 60s, the group that's now in charge of the Republican Party were on the fringe. They were the far right wing, and they were battling the Eisenhower Republicans, the Romney Republicans, the first Romney Republicans, the Rockefeller Republicans. But now the delusional fringe has come in from the margin and runs the party.
Delusional is an interesting word, because as I watch Newt Gingrich and listen to some of the things he says, we did this on the show in November. We compared his statements to some of Charlie Sheen's statements. And they're very similar. Megalomania. You know, Charlie said, "You cannot process me with a normal brain." That's very similar to what Newt said at the debate Thursday night when they asked him, you know, what would you do over? He said, well, you know, I tried to run as a normal candidate for a couple of weeks. Plainly not going to happen. I'm not normal. And I thought, no, you're not normal.
You know, given what the Republicans have said about Newt, I can't add anything to that discussion. But, you know, if you had told me, Bill, that in the 21st century, a grown man would have been playing the race card, as it has been played in South Carolina by the former speaker, I would have been very glad that I saved my Confederate money. Because if he is elected in November, I've got enough to get access to the White House, you know, of Confederate money.
Well, I mean, you were in Dean Acherson's race present at the creation for that in the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Wasn't it Lyndon Johnson who turned to you and said, we've lost the South for a generation?
Yes. The night he signed the historic Civil Rights Bill, I found him in his bedroom over in the mansion. I would take his night reading to him, and he had the Bulldog edition of the Washington Post across his chest. He was looking very down. The headline said, President signs historic act. I said, Mr. President, what's wrong? You should be ebullient. You should be very happy. And he said, I think we've just turned the Republican Party over to the South, over to the Republican Party for my lifetime and yours. And he was right, because it enabled them to exploit the white backlash that George Wallace embodied at that time, and they have used it to become the reddest region in the country over a long period of time now.